So what's new today? What's new? What's strange? What's the latest comeuppance? What shall we be currently bewildered by? I have survived another year. That's a good thing. I haven't had to undo the mortal coil as yet. It's always a fine thing to continue to thrive, continue to survive, continue to march. It's a nice thing to still be here. Many in various circumstances could have mitigated against me to insist that I would not have been. But let's not go into them here. So here we are, and here they are, and here we all are. I would believe, and I do believe I had a couple of points I would have liked to have mentioned today, but we'll just start off anyway with the first one. Which is that, be it for better or for worse, identity politics had a big impact on me. I've just come from something that I very, very occasionally do now, looking at some of these old, perhaps one might consider them nostalgic tapes or museum pieces of the old Rhodi or Rhodesian warlike agenda, in this instance the SAS, and their development in the 50s, which was actually prior to the Bush War, which had a huge, huge impact on that country, that culture. If I may digress, there have been developments in Zimbabwe of late that are very positive. And now I undigress and persist in my way, persist in my predetermined channel. Have a look if you want to regarding that other issue. It's easy to find on Facebook, on news broadcasts. At least I would hope so. But dwelling for a minute on the issue of identity politics and what that used to mean for me. It meant, in my case, and no doubt not in the case of others, it meant being discriminated against. It meant being treated without the benefit of the doubt, with the opposite, if you will, of the benefit of the doubt. So if there was a doubt, then I was guilty. Even if there was a slight doubt, I was guilty. I was deemed to have had the wrong mental attitude, to have committed a thought crime, to have stepped out of line, to have done behaviors that are not considered reasonable or modest or righteous or suitably appropriate to any particular situation I may have been in. That was the effect of identity politics on me. Identity politics, mind you, as a left-wing movement, that was the effect on me. Just having had a quick scrutiny of a old-timey video, military video, regarding the SAS in my original society, my country, as it were, which was at that time called Rhodesia. I can see, perhaps in a way, the kind of person I was presumed to have been. It may have been projected to have been. Supposing, however, that I was a 15-year-old girl, isolated, not terribly liked by her parents, because they had too much of a burden to deal with, and they were migrants themselves, and not terribly nourished or nurtured themselves, or knowledgeable, or really understanding of what it meant to be a human and to bring up another human being. The culture wasn't all that human. And supposing I was that person, and I was presumed to be an SAS soldier who was thoroughly and fully trained, very physically adept, very very much at the height of my physical ability and the height of my mental acuity, full of mental tricks, capabilities, strategies, tactics, all those sort of things. I think I would have been able to cope really adequately with what identity politics threw at me. I would have been okay. But I was a 15-year-old girl. I was uprooted. I was derooted. I was not liked necessarily by my parents, who didn't like necessarily my character structure or understand it. And I was in a totally alien environment that I hadn't been brought up in, without friends, because I hadn't been in that environment where I would have made friends, and I didn't understand modernity or its upward climbing tendencies, its grasping and its scraping. I found it all inimical. I found the environment inimical, which made my parents hate me more. Why don't you just simply adapt mechanically like you must? It would take the pressure off us. That was basically it. Not really that much deeper, except for my father's projections eventually regarding his own deeper psychological structures and states, which were very, very disturbing. And not just to him, I may add. And supposing I had been that SAS soldier that perhaps I had been taken to be, the representative of Rhodesia, which, by the way, necessarily has to be masculine. And by the way, I am not, wasn't, still rather much am not, but had to be. Supposing I was the mistaken identity I was put into the category of having been, I would have at least adequately defended myself. Maybe not thrived, but adequately responded, adequately understood, adequately come to terms with the situation. But I wasn't. I was 15 when I arrived. I was very vulnerable. I wasn't the privileged identity, even in my original culture, because I was female, sort of like degraded kind of human, not really considered very rational or very good at all by my original culture, not trained up, not skilled, not proficient, not militarized, not mobilized. So I succumbed very badly. I did develop health conditions after the battering and bruising I got from identity politics. But supposing I hadn't been, that was always in my mind. That was always in my consciousness. Supposing I hadn't been. Supposing I had had that training, had that initiation, had that understanding, had that historical background, had that drive to be, let's say, a right-winger, which I hadn't actually had either. I had no political aspirations when I was bashed. And supposing I had, supposing I had been adept at war, supposing I had physical prowess and very clever political skills and prowess, supposing I had been an adult male who had already been trained and skilled and developed, I would have handled that situation. That original situation that battered me to a pulp. Which was also really a secondary storm after my father had originally battered me. But let's not go there. This is something that one would have to be more than a skilled left-winger to be able to even begin to count and sort of take into consideration. And let's face it, most people are very superficial or opportunistic in who and what they attack. But let's say I had been an adult male, let's say I had been one of those guys. I've always thought of it, I've fantasized about it ever since I was bashed, ever since I was robbed of my dignity and my integrity and my sense of things and my aspirations and my hopes. And my place in my very precarious footing in a new society. Let's suppose I had been such a male. How would I have fared? Much better indeed. These are my thoughts for today. I do consider them relevant with regard to what was identity politics and what is still becoming of it. Whether we might consider identity politics to be an opportunistic measure which hasn't really got any deeper principles to it, or very much deep basis in intellectual understanding or ethical foundations. Uh, let's let's consider looking back from the day of yesterday, my birthday, and back to the past and what transpired there. Do you think I was unduly vulnerable? Unduly something? Unduly? I mean, in the context of the situation, is it possible to say so that I had excessive vulnerabilities? And if it were possible to say so, where did they come from? Did they come from the gender dynamics of my original society? Did they come from the misconstrual of my real identity and my being in the new society? Did they come from perpetual mystification and neglect and vilification and criminalization of what was not understood and what people still refuse to understand? Let's look back from this mid-year of 2016. It's a good time to reappraise, reevaluate, and reassess.